The Kinahans have grown from a local Dublin gang into Ireland's most powerful internationally recognised criminal organisation.
So as of today, the Kinahan transnational criminal organization joins the ranks of Italy's Camorra, Mexico's Los Zetas, Japan's Yakuza, and Russia's thieves-in-law.
With Daniel, who has become a central figure in the boxing world with his company MTK Global having advised the biggest names in the sport. Not to mention a war of almost unprecedented proportions in Irish criminal history, with a rival clan which has caused almost 20 murders across Europe since 2016. But let's go back several decades to understand the beginning of this cartel's criminal heyday. In the 1990s, Christopher was becoming an emerging figure in local crime in Dublin. Indeed, it was in the south of this city that he supplied drugs to the youths in his gang, which in the early 2000s underwent a split, resulting in a dozen deaths over the course of almost a decade. The ambitious Christopher, who in 2001 was again released from prison, maximised his time behind bars by devoting himself to education. Once out, he became fluent in Spanish and Dutch, which enabled him to make international contacts. He moved permanently to the south of Spain to be closer to the European wholesale cocaine market, while avoiding the Kremlin-Drimnar feud as much as possible. During his absence in Ireland, the leadership of his gang is given to Freddie Thompson, part of the Kremlin-based crew, which will become a well-established criminal group with a direct drug supply line from Kinahan, while the Drimnar faction will be virtually wiped out. As the years go by, the Kinahan Cartel begins to flourish, with Christopher becoming a major player in the criminal landscape by handling the distribution of the drugs across Europe. The success of his business also benefits Freddie's team, who are now involved in supplying drugs on a national scale. However, around 2008, he had to flee the country and gave way to his cousin, Liam Byrne, who became the cartel's top lieutenant and one of the most powerful figures in the Irish criminal landscape. Indeed, the Irish franchise of the cartel will even be dubbed the Byrne Organised Crime Group by the Criminal Assets Bureau, and whose sole purpose is to focus on Kinahan interests in the Republic. But the expansion of this criminal organisation abroad for almost a decade already will not go unnoticed.
Golpe a la mafia irlandesa afincada en España. Un total de 31 personas han sido detenidas en esta operación contra una de las principales redes del crimen organizado internacional. Los cabecillas dirigían desde la Costa del Sol todo este entramado dedicado al tráfico de drogas, armas y blanqueo de dinero.
Es una operación contra una mafia importante.
The Spanish police finally carried out a joint operation, Shovel, in 2010, with various people arrested, including some Kinahans. However, investigators were unable to find enough direct evidence to charge the drug lords.
I'm Christy Kinahan, who this week is back on the streets.
Hi, Mr. Kinahan, I'm from the Irish media. I was just wondering if you wanted to make any comment about the case against or anything like that.
After years, and with sloppy judicial work, the operation was officially stopped, not to mention that some members of the Spanish police force were even bribed. In any case, this investigation had already demonstrated the financial strength of the cartel, with investments all over the world that have now reached another level.
But has grown over the decades to become a transnational crime cartel involved in a wide range of criminality that is estimated to have generated over €1 billion for them.
With two sons incorporated in the organisation, it is indeed Daniel who is increasingly taking the lead. He co-founded MGM Boxing in 2012 in Marbella, which would soon fuel suspicions of money laundering in the boxing business, but would also be seen as a step closer to clearing his criminal reputation. In addition to Freddie, who handled the criminal operations, he was often accompanied by another criminal, Gerard Hutch, who positioned himself as a trusted man at the heart of the cartel. However, with drugs flowing and paranoia rising, Daniel and Gary argue over money. So Gary turns to a hitman to liquidate Daniel outside his luxury flat in southern Spain. But an innocent boxer is shot instead. After this failure, Gary flees Spain to get in touch with his uncle, Gerard Hutch, nicknamed the Monk, an old Irish criminal suspected of pulling off bigger heists in Ireland.
Done a lot of business and property. It was a good time, and that's where I made my money. If people say armed robberies, so be it. I mean, I was questioned about these armed robberies you're talking about, so we let them decide, the people.
He's now living very well off the proceeds of crime. He may be retired, but few believe he's fully reformed.
So the Monk goes to negotiate with the cartel to spare his nephew's life. It was agreed that in exchange for allowing Gary to live, Daniel would receive a payment of 200,000 euros in compensation for the shooting. However, the deal falls apart when former cartel member Gary is executed on Spanish soil, despite the promised assurance.
Gerard Hutch, who was shot dead in Marbella in 2015.
Chased by a gunman around a swimming pool in a residential complex in Marbella in September 2015 and shot 15 times.
Then, in late 2015, a hitman entered a bar in Lanzarote to kill the Monk, but the wily master sensed this moment and slipped away into the background. This moment turns the tables on the Irish underworld. On 5th of February 2016 in Dublin, during a ritual weigh-in for boxers on the eve of a fight, Hutch's team burst into the hall, people dressed in the uniform of an elite Garda unit with Kalashnikovs, and two others armed with pistols, one of them disguised as a woman. They have come to liquidate Daniel Kinahan in retaliation for Gary's assassination. However, the leader manages to escape, but Byrne's younger brother David does not and dies.
On arrival, they discovered three individuals, three males with gunshot wounds. They were immediately transported to hospital, where sadly, subsequently, one male in his 30s was pronounced dead.
One of the injured was Sean McGovern, who was part of the cartel's core group.
I see him there, maybe 6 meters from me, and then I see like this, and then I see the gun at the back, and then I go, and I hear boom, 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 boom. Shots get let go behind.
A few days later, the retaliation was imminent when the brother of the Monk, an innocent taxi driver, died after being shot 9 times. From then on, the frequency and barbaric nature of the many attacks that follow would be described as unprecedented. The war would be waged between Byrne, Freddie and Daniel on the one hand, and veteran criminal Monk on the other. Between an overpowered criminal cartel and a family of which only a few members are hardened criminals, it became a complete elimination of all those connected to Monk. The result was 18 deaths, 14 of which were allegedly ordered by Daniel. This is not surprising, with the global advantage and wealth of the cartel funding their Dublin unit to wipe out the rival. They even went so far as to hire an Estonian hitman. Indeed, Emre landed in Ireland to eliminate an individual linked to the Hutch. However, he did not know he was under police surveillance, who caught him directly. From analysis of his phone and messages exchanged with the caller, it turned out that Arakas had said the following sentence in relation to the execution process.
It could be just one shot to the head from distance. It's possible. I will see what I can do. Best regards.
The two previously aligned factions went to war, sparking the deadliest gang feud in Ireland's history.
As the bodies piled up, the central figures of the Kinahan clan moved their European base from Spain to Dubai, which became their new headquarters without an extradition agreement with Ireland. And the criminal enterprise, previously unknown to the general public, attracted worldwide attention. But especially the Gardaí, who were working harder than ever to put pressure on the criminal group.
Gardaí in Dublin have increased armed patrols and surveillance on known gang members as part of the operation to prevent more killings in an ongoing feud between the Hutch and Kinahan crime groups.
In total, at least 79 members of the gang would be put behind bars, including Freddie, who was jailed for one of the deaths in the feud, and some of the remaining members deserted Ireland, such as Liam Byrne, who fled to Birmingham. This is not surprising, given the years of relentless effort by law enforcement to afflict and dismantle his group.
Property, cars, jewellery and cash were seized by the Criminal Assets Bureau from gang leader Liam Byrne.
The earnings from organised crime being confiscated by the Criminal Assets Bureau. 31 luxury and high-end cars, motorcycles and a dune buggy. Thousands in cash and expensive jewellery.
This crackdown will have a direct effect on another local Dublin-based gang, the Gucci Gang, run by Mr. Flashy, and which has emerged strongly since the Kinahan-Hutch feud. Indeed, this youth gang was at the end of the chain, specialising in retailing. They operated with the blessing of the cartel, who taxed them in exchange for access to areas formerly controlled by the cartel. Mr. Flashy was supplied with drugs by the Kinahans, which allowed him to gain respect in the eyes of his gang members, but also to spread fear around him. Not to mention that some of his members had been used by the cartel as easy workforce in the conflict against the Hutch. Thus, the Gucci Gang was even seen as a future big player in the Irish underworld. However, this group cohesion would be disrupted when the Kinahans reduced their activities in Ireland, which would have an impact on the gang's turnover. This instability and internal conflict has caused the group to split into two factions, one of Mr. Flashy and the other consisting of a group around James Whelan, who was murdered in April 2022 as part of this factional war. As far as Mr. Flashy is concerned, he is reportedly hiding from his enemies with many of his former associates, who no longer remain by his side. His vulnerable position is demonstrated when he escapes an assassination attempt in June 2022 while sitting in the back of a taxi, and a month later he would not even show up at court because of fears for his safety. On the other hand, despite the deteriorating situation in Ireland for the Kinahans, they continued to play their role as a drug distribution centre in Europe, with the main trafficking outlet still being the UK.
We have targeted their most trusted associates, including the head of their UK network, Thomas Kavanagh, and also James Mulvey. The Kinahan organised crime group have transcended international boundaries, distributing multi-million-pound shipments of cocaine and heroin throughout Ireland, the UK and mainland Europe.
These two were originally part of the core group of 4 people who were mainly involved in supplying the British sector with drugs and weapons. However, it was Bomber who was considered the most important representative of the cartel on the island. The National Crime Agency went so far as to say that its division was described as a true Kinahan franchise. Bomber began to emerge in the underworld around 2004, when Christopher had moved to Spain and needed to place someone he trusted on the island to run the business. So, Bomber didn't hesitate to seize the opportunity to enter the big league by moving from Ireland to near Birmingham, where he became the cartel's main man. The Gang of Four would be rocked in September 2014 with the death of one of its members, Gerard. He was Bomber's cousin who worked as a money collector for the cartel, among other things. However, the money was potentially embezzled on several occasions by Gerard, but also by his brother, who was involved in the same activities. The cartel had realized that the money raised by the two Kavanagh brothers to pay back the syndicate was not always passed on to them afterwards. And since Bomber treated all those who disobeyed or showed disloyalty to him with equal measures of violence, then, according to the police hypothesis, the two brothers would have been punished by Bomber, who gave the Kinahans permission to eliminate them. First Gerard, trapped near Marbella. And then Paul, killed north of Dublin. During the funeral of the latter, even Conor McGregor will show up. After the death of the first brother, tensions rose sharply in the group. Indeed, although Mulvey and Bomber worked together, in reality, Mulvey was terrified of Bomber, given how ruthless the cartel is. His calls were even secretly recorded, in which he expressed his paranoia potentially about the cartel.
The Irish and Papists. Maddest.
In the recorded calls, James suspected Thomas Bomber of knowing about the trap set for his cousin Gerard.
But yeah, very rarely you went down there, so someone must you know you were going down there. Do you understand? Someone sets him off that because he wouldn't be in, very rarely at this time he wouldn't be down there.
Don't tell me 3 attempts on him and Thomas doesn't know who it was. I can't believe that. He knows everyone. They are that big. Someone must have known he was down there. Someone close. He's let them give the green light. It's nothing to do with me.
On the other hand, he showed no compassion for Gerard when the latter had caused him trouble by accusing him of being a rat.
This is what my life was. I tried to get away with it, but I don't want you involved in it. Do you not understand how these people work? Do you not understand? If they can't get to me, they go to the people you love, they kill the people you love.
Eventually, James will be caught by the Lithuanian authorities after a long run. As for Bomber, he was also the brother-in-law of David Byrne, who was shot in the 2016 Regency Hotel shooting. And a day after his funeral, he was already planning a big delivery from Europe to show the enemies their strength. For a long time, he avoided serious charges until police discovered various weapons in his fortified house in 2019, and he himself was arrested on his return in Birmingham airport by law enforcement. The short prison sentence allowed the authorities to keep Kavanagh at bay, while they still continued to investigate his massive gang operations. They eventually proved Bomber's involvement in large-scale drug shipments worth around €36 million.
In the past few minutes, the National Crime Agency has released a statement saying that Kavanagh was a high-ranking member of the Kinahan Cartel, an organised crime group synonymous with acts of violence. He was their main man in the UK.
But according to the investigators, this was only the tip of the iceberg. Indeed, the latter would have flooded the two markets with drugs worth over 700 million, while he was at the top of the Kinahan tree for a decade. And these drugs were in turn to be sold on the street, as illustrated by one of the teams in Liverpool.
80 quid drop, son! 80 quid drop, son! Woo! Find the food!
With Liam Cornett and his right-hand man Michael Rice not shy about showing off their life of luxury in paradises abroad, these two enjoyed a lavish lifestyle funded by massive drug operations they oversaw. Indeed, according to one source, Liam worked directly for the cartel, and it was they who took him to the next level of his criminal career. Today, he appears to be a very rare example of a Liverpool criminal who was able to come off the street to work for such a powerful group. Cornet was the head of a supply line that distributed drugs to street dealers, which expanded across England. The operation followed a model known as county lines, in which local dealers were sent to different towns to carry out the transactions after a gang phone line received orders from customers. The structure was made up of about 20 individuals who moved from the main organisers to the local couriers. But Cornet's activities would be exposed when a homemade grenade stored above a wardrobe was accidentally set off in a house in Liverpool. A house in which police had also discovered a stash of drugs worth around £1.6 million. As a result, investigators focused on this international network by launching Operation Anvil. As part of the latter, Rice was arrested in his Audi on the streets of Liverpool in possession of a loaded gun. Then it will be Cornet's turn to be jailed in late 2019, including the dismantling of his team. But back to the Kinahan's cartel.
I am very pleased to be here today for this important announcement of a series of actions our countries and organizations are undertaking jointly to counter the Kinahan transnational criminal organization, also known as the KTCO.
While the Kinahans were quietly laundering their money in the heat of the Persian Gulf, the US Department of Justice joined the party by offering a $5 million reward for all information leading to the arrest of the cartel leaders. This set off a chain reaction with the complete freezing of both the clan's property and investments in the US, and the freezing of their assets in the Emirates. This should disrupt their financial base to such an extent that they will be eventually dismantled. Significantly, the Garda's efforts to persuade the US to make a formal appearance on the ground against the cartel took about 3 years. However, their presence is necessary because although the Garda have hit the gang members hard in Ireland, they are now entering a new phase aimed at attacking the leadership of this transnational group based in an out-of-reach jurisdiction, and so a coordinated effort is required to reach them.
Here today is the culmination of years of hard work and dedication, resulting in a series of very significant enforcement measures that will deal a heavy blow, if not a crippling blow, to the Kinahan organised crime gang.
The Garda believe that Daniel's involvement in sport was the biggest and only mistake the cartel has made. Indeed, his boxing management grew to an unpredictable size. At its peak, there would be more than 200 boxers joining it, which positioned it as potentially the largest boxing management company in Europe. And all of this has brought a lot of light to the Kinahans. In 2017, Daniel officially stepped down from the company, and as a result of the bad reputation, the name was renamed MTK Global, with a new boss, Sandra V, at the helm, who stipulated that she no longer had any links with the alleged gangster. However, the leaked documents show that there were links between MTK Global and Ducashew Consultancy, a key Kinahan company, which had just been blacklisted by the US. And Sandra would have been the managing director of the Ducashew at the same time. Not to mention that both companies were registered at the same address in the Jumeirah Lakes Towers area, and so Daniel was suspected of still having a footprint in MTK. Indeed, the organisation gained influence when the famous Tyson Fury joined, and it was indeed Daniel who was his advisor. who had even played a major role in bringing Fury out of obscurity after winning his title in 2015. In any case, his role was revealed by Fury himself in a viral video in 2020.
Hello there, I'm just after getting off the phone with Daniel Kinahan. He's just informed me that the biggest fight in British boxing history has just been agreed. Get up there, my boy! Big shout out, Dan. He got this done. Literally over the line. 2-fight deal. Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua.
Speculation about Kinahan's influence in boxing resurfaced, as he clearly used money that was nowhere to be found in the boxing industry, being able to offer 5 times as much as other managers. But Daniel advocates another version, stating that his success led to a campaign against him and that he is in no way part of a criminal gang. In any case, after Daniel was put on the most wanted list, MTK Global announced that it was ceasing its operations.
What was your relationship with him, and what's your relationship going to be going forward?
I've just had a million questions about all this rubbish before, but like I said to them, it's none of my business, and I don't get involved in other people's business, so it doesn't really concern me.
And obviously, a lot has been made of the fact that you were pictured with him in February. Does that suggest that you are still close to him?
To be honest, I've never been close to anybody apart from my wife and my kids.
And Daniel's ambition to be the benefactor of boxing came crashing down. It was easier to launder dirty money than their reputation. Indeed, an EU-funded investigation into the Kinahan Cartel had already identified more than 200 companies around the world linked to criminal activity at the time. It now appears that the group has followed the example of the Italian Mafia by creating front companies specializing in the food and textile sectors to transport drugs and launder money.
As a result of the sanctions imposed today, which have cut them off from the global financial system, this will be a huge blow to the Kinahans. Their bank accounts have been frozen and funds within them inaccessible. This group thought they were untouchable, but this shows that we will explore every opportunity available to disrupt their criminal activities.
This move will make them toxic to legitimate businesses and make other criminals think twice about doing business with them. But apparently the cartel is far from being wiped out and has years to go. Indeed, even if the group's number one, Daniel, is arrested or killed, the structure of the organization is so resilient that it should endure in the long term. And according to Professor Annie Sergey, the cartel currently has 3 priorities: saving Daniel, who is the most exposed, protecting the assets they have, and continuing to sell drugs. Adding that if the gang managed to secure 2 of these priorities, then they would continue to thrive in the business. However, there is a problem that could get in the way of this equation: the presence of a snitch in the structure. Indeed, Christopher Sr. is conducting an internal investigation, suspecting that there is a leak of information from the inner circle of the highest-ranking associates. At first, it was thought to be an infiltration by a DEA agent, but Christie, known for his use of counter-surveillance, concluded that this was not the case. Indeed, the organization worked for years in a hierarchical cellular structure, with no 2 units knowing what the other was doing, and so only the core group was aware of the overall configuration. Christopher, who carefully chose his own trusted business partners, has doubts about those of his son Daniel, so his suspicions even turned to McGovern, his son Daniel's closest lieutenant. However, with such paranoia, they will do everything to find the informant.
Since 2016, the Kinahan organization has waged a bloody war with another criminal gang in Ireland and Spain and has left many dead, including innocent bystanders, and terrorized civilian populations along the way.
Over the last few years, the cartel has become rather quiet in Dublin, partly due to Daniel's reinvention in the boxing business. Indeed, he is said to have ordered a break from the murders in the feud to avoid any negative publicity that would damage his reputation as a businessman. However, since the international police operation against him, he has no reason to keep a low profile. As described by one source, the gloves will be coming off soon. There is a fear that the cartel will once again bring out the guns in the Irish capital, especially to target the remaining members of the Hutch gang. Indeed, some associates of the group around Bern won't stop until everyone involved in the 2016 shooting is dead, and there is a total of 29 people on the death list. Speaking of Bern, he seemed to be enjoying his life as he even celebrated the Champions League final in Paris. And according to the Gardaí, if any of the top lieutenants are to be caught, it will be Liam who is taking too many risks by staying in the UK. There is one final aspect to consider, and that is the emergence of new local competition. Since the Kinahans' operations have come under pressure in Ireland, other organisations have taken advantage of the situation by filling the gap left by the Kinahans. This is particularly true for the two Grendon brothers, who run a criminal organisation called The Family. They have been growing under the radar while Garda resources have been injected into the hunt for the Irish cartel and anyone else connected with their feud, such as the arrest of the monk last summer in Spain while out for dinner. In any case, the Garda is concerned that the Family is becoming the biggest local drug gang in Ireland because of the international crackdowns on the Kinahans. But the cartel doesn't seem to be letting up, as recently a senior member of the group was sent from Dubai to Dublin to re-establish the cartel's dominance in the city's underworld and prevent others from taking over. This senior member aims to re-establish the drug trade in the Republic by filling the vacancy left by Liam Byrne, who fled to the UK.
To them I'd say, you can run, but you can't hide from justice forever. And from today, they will be running low on money, friends and influence. I'm confident, particularly with the strength of purpose demonstrated by all of the partners here today, that those senior members of the Kinahan gang will be brought to justice sooner rather than later. And that'll be a good day for the citizens of this country and a good day for very many others throughout the world. Thank you very much. Thank you.